Welcome to the Ohio Lodge of Researchers podcast, OLR Connections. I am Brother David Doherty, and in this episode, I continue the conversation with Right Worshipful Brother Alex Herbert and Worshipful Brother Don Cruz as they discuss the process of writing books and how that also relates to sharing your story and sharing your Masonic community.
I mentioned that this whole thing got started with the Wikipedia article. Well, once I had collected all of this information, I realized the article was wrong. In this case, the story is about all of the major figures are Belgian. They all speak French. Pretty much all of the primary source materials are written in French. And once upon a time, someone had translated one of them and gotten a few things wrong. And as often happens, unfortunately, in Masonic research, or just, I guess, amateur, non-academic research in general. Things get repeated, especially on social media. They take on a life of their own. No one digs any deeper than what they had just been told. And these inaccuracies suddenly got ingrained in the English telling of the history of this lodge. So a major driver for me was simply to correct the record. Like, now I've got the true story, and this has to get out somewhere. And I'm not a Wikipedia editor. I still haven't gone back to fix anything. I probably should at some point, but
yeah.
I
thought more than once adding an errata page, because as for instance, when I got to research on I did in the book, all the Grand Masters who were from the Cincinnati area and all the Grand Secretaries who are in the book. There's a picture of somebody, I won't point it out in particular, but there's a picture that's supposed to be a particular Grand Master, because it was in the Grand Lodge's file under this this Most Worshipful Brother's name. It was pointed out to me very quickly after it came out, is that's not who you're saying it is. I'm like, well, God, I don't know. He was Grand Master the year I was born, so I really didn't know, but it was in the file. So I'm not the only person who mistook him for somebody else. So, but again, and there's a few other things that are just little errors that you pick up along the way, but. And I suspect this is true with yours, because, of course, Alex, I will try to find your book as soon as I can now after this, because I've got to have it. I mean, one more. What is one more book going to do, except for maybe because the second floor become the first floor of my house? But isn't it better to have those few little mistakes and have this information out there? I mean, one thing's in looking in my book, the number of Masonic buildings that have even been knocked down since I wrote this. Mm-hmm. My timing was impeccable for catching things before they disappeared. Oakley Lodge, the buildings, their lodge they had actually in Oakley is long gone. They've sold the property. There's an apartment building on it. If I hadn't caught that when I did, I would have no record of it. There's probably brothers, especially, who will come past us in Cincinnati, who will never know that lodge existed as it did then and there. Mm-hmm. And so I would rather risk that there might be. I say 1947, it was 1948, that somebody's name was Hall and I called in Hill. That's all stuff that can be corrected, and it kind of gives some fun stories while you're doing it. But perfection, what is it, perfect or great, what is perfect is the enemy of good.
Yeah. Yeah, and Don, you're absolutely right about motivation too, because I'll tell you, I did not publish to make money. Honestly, the book is priced as low as it possibly could to get the full distribution that I wanted, and all of the proceeds end up getting donated to charity anyway.
At the risk of sounding like the old crotchety guy, I deal with a lot of students who definitely have this attitude of, it's just too hard. I don't want to bother. How would you address that concern?
Well, I was that student once upon a time, so I unfortunately understand that perspective. I would say that very few things in life actually come easy. You can live a decent life and have it easy. I don't know if you can live a great life and have it be easy. And I reached a point, fortunately, relatively early on, where I realized, like, I was racking up regrets of things that I hadn't done, opportunities that some of them came again, many of them did not. and learning that, yeah, if I didn't put the effort in, even if I failed, I would regret not having tried even more than the failure itself, which is a very difficult thing to communicate. And unfortunately, maybe it is one of those things where you just have to have enough life lessons before you come to that realization. It's not something that could be um, really ingrained in you, but it's not going to stop you from trying.
Yeah.
And that's a really important point is, I have a quote literally up, and I'm reading it right here. It's a Winston Churchill quote. Success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts. And last night, something I was watching on TV, they quoted the Theodore Roosevelt about the man in the arena. It's far better to be beaten and so on, and still strive to do. And of course, that doesn't mean we shouldn't do our best. That doesn't mean, and sometimes things come easy, and some things come easier to us than they come to other people. I'm not suddenly recommending everybody go try to write a book. As Alex will tell you, it is not for the faint of heart. It's not for sissies.
So both of you, in one form or another, described the process as painful. So why do it?
I would say that I had mentioned earlier that the story itself was pushing me towards publication. It was painful, it was difficult, but to be honest, if I hadn't done it, I think I would still be obsessing over it to this day. That at least publishing it it's done, it's finished, and it's largely out of my head now and on the page. Versus if I hadn't gone through that process, I would probably still be obsessing over it to this day.
I guess it's something I thought there was a need for. And I really would feel that I had, there's one of the lines is from the Masonic funeral about, we'll keep his name upon our hearts. And I always think about that is if we don't capture these things, and again, my story is more about people than anything else. The story is, so I say while I do have pictures of buildings and so on, a lot of times it's to tell a story about somebody who gave that building or who contributed to make that building possible or whatever. It's to me, it was very much a story of people and one of my earliest points of view that I take in writing the book or in telling the story is, Cincinnati had existed for less than 3 years. When they go to the trouble of gathering money and sending William Burnett back to New Jersey to get a charter. Because in this little town at that point that probably had less than 500, not even close to 500 people, he would travel. And the amount, it was tough enough to come down the Ohio to come to Cincinnati. Imagine going back up the Ohio across Pennsylvania and going back to New Jersey. Special session, the Grand Lodge in New Jersey meets and founds the only lodge they ever found outside of the boundaries of the state of New Jersey. Why? Because it was so important to them. Life consisted of a church, schools, businesses, and a Masonic lodge. They saw that as part of their worldview, that it was home included these things. My community included this. It was incredibly important to them. And I don't want us to lose that understanding. I think it puts it in a, obviously we're sociologically doesn't fit any longer, but certainly in that day and age amongst a particular population, that was the world. And if you wanted civilization to come to the Northwest Territory, you brought a lodge. They did the same. Marietta did the exact same thing, right? They decided, hey, I have a charter. This charter left over is sitting in my trunk. Do you think we can use it? Sure, why not? Because that's part of our community. We've got our little congregational church. We've built a fort. We're safe. We've got some businesses that are running. We're the shipbuilding business. I think the story, if we study it, we find we were repeated all over. And to me, that was important. And, if not me, who? If not now, when? John Bezek spoke at William O'Ware last Wednesday. I'm so sorry you missed it. He was, as always, he was his amazing self. But he was talking about the self-help industry, and that isn't all the things they ask for in self-help, isn't that really what we're offering in masonry? Like anything else, of course. I mean, he simplified it enough that because that's the only way you can talk about it. And of course, with what I do, I guess you could say I'm related to this coaching thing is related to that. Though I agree with much of what he said. But this process of building that house not made with hands, eternal in the heavens, that's a heck of a lot of work. If we actually strive to do that, right? And perhaps that's one of our problems in the fraternity outside of writing a book about it. But if we make it so easy and so cheap to be a Mason, this is a mitzvah, if you will. If you want to think of the sort of the Jewish thing, kindness for the sake of kindness. You do. I said, in part, this is done for my brothers now, my brothers in the past. Needless to say, it's done for myself. I want people to know those ideas. I want people to know these great men who did these great things, who didn't think it was easy. Think of guys who decided, I'm going out into the wilderness, where there are Indians attacking, where there are animals that may eat us, where there are diseases constantly. Oh yeah, and I'm going to basically create an entire new world, an entire new life. Writing a book's easy. Becoming a better man is not.
Yeah. What was that? Can you describe that feeling when you held the first printed copy in your hands?
I don't know if I will ever have another moment like that. I will have good moments, but I don't know if I'll have another one like that.
So that's the why, right? I mean, that's one of the why.
That's one of the. That was a very big why.
Unfortunately, you don't get to realize that why until you've been through the whole process. That's the challenge for people.
And David, maybe the next piece of it is, I can remember, like, for the first time I had the books, I think literally that day I got them. So I took the box with me to Commandery. As much as they just call my friends, I don't even know if I was thinking very much about selling or whatever. I'm walking in the building and I'd show it to the first guy I showed to, and he's go like, "Are you selling them?" And I'm like, what? And it's kind of like, oh, people might want these. I mean, I knew what the whole price is, but it's still like, oh wow, somebody really be willing to get a hand over their hard-earned cash for something that I wrote. It was just affirmation, I suppose.
Yeah. Cool.
I think the other moment was it was after I moved out here and I visited a local lodge, and their brethren gathered around a table chit-chatting, and we got on the topic of like history and World War II history, and we go down the rabbit hole. And someone mentions like, I found this this awesome book about a lodge that meets in a concentration camp. And I think, oh my God, someone else wrote one. Like I have to get a copy of this and like compare notes before I realized it was mine. It's like the first time I actually like encountered it in the wild.
That's so cool.
And they didn't realize it was yours when they brought it up?
No, they didn't realize I was me. So
oh, okay.
So cool. That's so cool.
That's very cool. That's very cool. So I believe you have both written lodge education programs of some sort. I know you've both written papers. Obviously you've both written books. Not talking about the process, talk about the advantages, disadvantages, and so forth. Other than just sheer volume of information, why would you write something as a paper or as opposed to a book, or a program versus a paper?
I realized quite quickly that I enjoyed educating, and that when I found a topic that really dug into my brain, I had to share it with somebody. And I was able to use the lodge as like my bully pulpit for that. Now, as far as like a presentation versus a paper versus a book, to be honest, like we said, writing a book is a very involved process, and it has to be a very special story. For me, it comes down to how useful will this tidbit of information be? Is this something that I just find interesting, and brethren can think about it, and maybe go home that night and think, I actually learned something today? Or is this something that could be useful in a greater context? Could this be referenced in the future? If I think for a second that something is actually rises to the level of someone can actually build on this and write something better next time, I feel the urge to actually write a paper pseudo-academically through like the Ohio Lodge of Research or through some other venue, simply to have it in the larger body of research available for other people to then call on. Yeah, maybe my own effort might not be the best, but there's always the hope that if not, someone else will build on it in the future.
Creating a starting point, if nothing else.
Again, in capturing the fire in a bottle, as it were, which just kind of goes back to also your thing about taking notes and trying to keep that as you're going. Like, how do I tell that piece of the? And sometimes it's the purpose, I think, comes forward. I mean, an issue with writing a book with this is, to some degree, I had to think about all these pictures. Is, do I have rights to these pictures? And of course, it's nice when it's stuff belonging to my lodge and stuff that's old enough that it's. And I remember Kevin Grace, who I already mentioned to you, said to me, use postcards. Nobody ever went to the trouble of copywriting them. And he says, and absolutely nobody ever renewed the copyright. He goes, I promise you, any old postcard is in, any like the chromato, there's really cool ones that look like somebody used a watercolor set and painted over them, right? He says none of those are copywritten. Nobody ever went to the trouble of redoing it. So he says that was a great source of. But so writing something like this is okay. I have to write something that we would have access to the material, to the pieces of the puzzle to put it together. So, which perhaps I wouldn't be quite as restrictive as I'm trying to. I'm doing an LEO program, a 10-minute LEO program. Even if I'm going to have slides, I'm like, okay, yeah, I know I took this right out of this copywritten book, but I'm not getting any money out of it. I'm not. It's not going to be distributed beyond that. For instance, I've talked to you this thing about the artist who did the work for Manly P. Hall's Secret Teachings of All Ages. Turns out he's from Norwood, of all things. And of course, I don't have the right to those pictures, but a few of those I find, I can't imagine there would be any a problem with me showing them for an educational purposes. I think if you read copyright law, you find but I could never republish them because they're not my pictures. They're not, that would be one of the limiting factors. There's also sometimes it's just something you want to bring up. Something that sort of just catches your attention and again, as I said, saying lightning or saving fire in a bottle. Yeah, okay, I just want to get this out. I know there's something I heard guys talking about. And it's sometimes also when people react to what you did, if they use the term affirmation. There's a guy who's been lodged for like Norwood 30 years, almost as long as I've been a Mason. And after I did a program, I don't even remember, it wasn't very deep or very involved. But twice afterwards, at two different meetings, he says, oh, that was just so good. I learned so much. I've been a Mason all these years. I didn't know any of that stuff. And it's okay. It's serving a purpose. Somebody is more of a Mason, at least for a few minutes. Well, obviously more than a few minutes, because he told me days and weeks later, it affected his Masonry. It affected his life. It affected him positively. I mean, isn't that a wonderful thing to be able to do?
Yeah, excellent. Yeah. So what's next for Don Cruz and Alex Herbert? What are you working on now?
Well, to be honest, I moved to Denver in 2022, right after my term as Master of the Ohio Lodge of Research ended. I haven't affiliated out here yet. I immediately sunk my teeth into my new job. I started a master's program this year, so I'm back in academia. All of my research and like that whole side of my being is now fully invested in like my actual work. So in many ways, my experiences through Masonry, my experiences with the Ohio Lodge of Research, my experiences in writing this book really primed me for, I guess, this new chapter of my own non-Masonic life. But I'm still finding time for Masonry. Like I said, I'm Master of Castle Island Virtual Lodge this year. I'm wrapping up my term in December. I'm going to my first annual communication tomorrow morning, flying up to Manitoba for that. So still finding ways to involve Freemasonry, to honor Freemasonry. But I feel like since I moved out here, I've really kind of opened a new chapter of my life.
I would love to find a project that I would be willing to do what it took. The coaching and the things I'm doing, I'm so involved with that, especially since I've been doing the work with the guys in reentry. That's absorbed a big chunk of my time. If I could find another topic, I'm talking to people. If there's a broader topic, again, the fact that there have been some other books that Arcadia has published. Again, I find it is just such a great thing if you could find something that there also was the quantity of images and so on to make it a worthwhile possibility to succeed in doing something more, written, something greater. Something that required actually more text and so on would probably be harder to do than this was. I mean, obviously, there could easily be a text version of this that would cover other topics and other people and connections. But I have a funny feeling that this is a serendipitous thing, and that somehow out of the blue, something will grab my attention. I'm like, that's story again. It's worth it to tell that story before that story disappears. It's worth it to go through the pain, and the pain is the pain of wanting to do the right job and to do the job right, to go on to the next stage.
What do you think we should do? Where would you like to see, either one of you, where would you like to see the Lodge of Research go in the future from this point forward?
It's a really difficult question. It's like you mentioned, I don't really have the boots on the ground perspective of it anymore. But to be honest, and this is a little bit of a cop out, is especially since I've left, so since the end of my term as master, I've been really impressed with the new arc that the lodge has taken. Getting more involved with the meetings, getting more officers in the progressive line. This podcast, it seems like the lodge is more alive now than it ever was, especially certainly during my term. So as far as recommending where to go next, I would just say that I'm very interested to see where this arc takes you from here, what new uncharted territory you'll end up in without my direction.
Yeah.
I would say one of the positives I've seen, David, that towards the end of my second term, when Bob Stakoff brought Club
Express,
in as an idea, that made a huge difference. And I often tell people we are one of the few bodies I know that is better off because of COVID than not. And a lot of that has to do with the programming that you started. I know you started a little before then, but we were already on our feet to do virtual stuff when that started. And some of that has been, we've had guest speakers, and we've also done stuff amongst ourselves. And I think that's given us, especially with a statewide and actually a national, not just because of people like Alex who were around, but we do have people who joined from all over the country. And then there are a lot of, we've had speakers from all over the country. People from Nebraska, people from DC, ones that come directly to mind. A guy from Mississippi, right?
Jeremy,
that I think that's allowed. I think our continued presence at Grand Lodge is an excellent, is a good idea. I think people literally walk up and we have a Lodge of Research. I think that's been a positive. I know, for instance, I'm involved with the chapter of research, which at one time far eclipsed the Lodge of Research, and it has certainly turned in the other way. And now we're trying to find some of the things that for the chapter of research that the Lodge of Research has done that would be helpful. I also, I think the meetings when we've had them, the live meetings have also been very good. I think we've done, there's a lot of positive. Something else I liked is this year, I'm LEO at Norwood this year. At the past Masters Convocation and the LEO meeting, the district education officers made a big push, especially Ron Hart Sr. Made a big push for us. I have no idea if this was all over the state, but in the first district, it was definitely pushed that this would be a great tool for LEOs to be using in their lodges. And I have had several people come up to me because, of course, they said, "Hey, Don, can you speak to it? You've obviously been involved." And I've had several of the other LEOs come up to me at other things and going, "Hey, I want you to know I joined the Lodge of Research." So I think if we continue to get that kind of support, which we started several years ago, saying, why don't we give the DEOs free access? Well, if we're then getting members who join of their own accord who are LEOs, that's proof in the pudding, right? If 1/10 of all the LEOs in the state joined because of that, we'd have a massive increase in membership.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, gentlemen, thank you very much. I do appreciate you taking the time to sit down and talk. I know it took us a while to find a time for the three of us to make this happen. I'm glad we did it, though.